Have you ever watched Eastern Promises and wondered if a criminal empire like this really existed? What if I told you that while the movie's characters were fictional, the world they lived in was terrifyingly real? The Russian prison tattoos, the secret code of the Thieves-in-Law, the human trafficking, and the powerful crime syndicates operating in London were all inspired by real events that law enforcement spent decades trying to uncover. In this video, we're separating Hollywood from history. We'll reveal the real criminal empire that inspired Eastern Promises, uncover the truth behind the Russian Mafia known as the Bratva, explain the hidden meaning of every tattoo, compare Semyon to real-life figures like Sergey Mikhailov, and answer the question millions of fans have asked for nearly 2 decades: how much of Eastern Promises is actually true? Health Wealth Diary presents the real story behind the movie Eastern Promises. To understand Eastern Promises, we first have to travel back to the Soviet Union. During the Soviet era, millions of people lived under one of the most tightly controlled governments in history. The state monitored nearly every aspect of life. The economy was centrally planned, private enterprise was virtually non-existent, and dissent was often met with imprisonment. Inside that prison system, a unique criminal society emerged. These were not ordinary thieves. They developed their own laws, traditions, language, symbols, and hierarchy. They answered to no government. They rejected authority completely. Over time, these elite criminals became known as the Vory V Zakone, or Thieves-in-Law. Becoming a thief-in-law was never as simple as committing crimes. A man had to earn absolute respect from other senior criminals. He was expected to live entirely outside the law. Traditionally, holding legitimate employment was forbidden. Cooperating with police was considered the ultimate betrayal. Loyalty to fellow thieves came above everything else, even family. These unwritten rules created one of the most disciplined criminal cultures in the world, and they survived for generations. When the Soviet Union collapsed in December 1991, everything changed almost overnight. Factories shut down, banks failed, millions lost their jobs, government institutions crumbled. Entire industries were suddenly available for private ownership, often with little oversight. Corruption flourished. Former intelligence officers, businessmen, politicians, and career criminals all rushed to seize wealth in the chaos. For organized crime, it was the perfect opportunity. Groups that had once operated mostly within Soviet borders suddenly expanded across Europe, North America, and beyond. This new era transformed the Russian underworld into an international business: money laundering, drug trafficking, extortion, arms dealing, cybercrime, counterfeit goods, and human trafficking. The Bratva diversified rapidly, becoming one of the world's most influential criminal networks. Unlike the American Mafia, there was no single boss controlling every operation. Instead, numerous groups operated independently while respecting long-established traditions inherited from the prison culture. Some specialized in financial crimes, others controlled prostitution rings, others trafficked drugs or weapons. Many worked together when profits aligned. Others became bitter rivals. This decentralized structure made them extraordinarily difficult for police to dismantle. Taking down one group rarely affected the others. By the mid-1990s, London had become one of Europe's financial capitals. Its booming economy attracted investors, entrepreneurs, and organized crime. Russian-speaking criminal groups quietly established themselves throughout the city. Many appeared to be perfectly legitimate businesses. Behind closed doors, investigators would later discover that some were being used to launder money, coordinate criminal activities, and hide enormous fortunes. This world became the foundation for Eastern Promises. But surprisingly, the film did not begin with gangsters. It began with a screenwriter asking a simple question: Stephen Knight wanted to explore London's hidden communities, the worlds most people passed every day without ever noticing. He researched extensively, speaking with detectives, specialists in Russian organized crime, and people familiar with Eastern European immigrant communities. Again and again, investigators described organizations unlike anything audiences had seen in mainstream cinema. These weren't loud mobsters demanding protection money in broad daylight. They preferred invisibility, respectability, silence. That fascinated Knight. He realized the most dangerous criminals were often the ones nobody suspected. The result wasn't a true story adaptation. It became something arguably more unsettling, a fictional story built from dozens of real investigations. When director David Cronenberg joined the project, authenticity became an obsession. Every detail mattered: the language, the restaurants, the customs, the family dynamics, most importantly, the tattoos. Unlike Hollywood props, Russian prison tattoos carry meaning. Every symbol tells part of a person's history: stars, churches, crosses, cats, skulls. Each can represent prison sentences, criminal rank, ideological beliefs, or personal history. Within criminal circles, false tattoos were historically considered a serious offense. A person displaying symbols they hadn't earned risked violent punishment. Viggo Mortensen immersed himself in this world. He studied Russian. He researched prison culture. He learned the significance of every tattoo placed on his body for the film. According to people familiar with Russian prison traditions, the artwork looked remarkably authentic. Some reportedly assumed the tattoos represented a genuine criminal background. That level of realism became one of the reasons Eastern Promises stood apart from other crime films. But tattoos were only the surface. Beneath them lay something far darker. One of the movie's central storylines follows the exploitation of vulnerable young women. Sadly, this wasn't Hollywood fiction. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, criminal organizations across Eastern Europe targeted women with promises of legitimate work abroad. They advertised jobs as waitresses, models, nannies, housekeepers. Many victims believed they were leaving poverty behind. Instead, some found themselves trapped in foreign countries with no money, no documents, and no way home. Passports were confiscated. Threats became routine. Violence ensured obedience. Law enforcement agencies across Europe documented trafficking networks that stretched from the former Soviet states into cities like London, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, and Rome. It became one of organized crime's most profitable businesses. That horrifying reality gave Eastern Promises much of its emotional weight. The film never glamorizes the underworld. Instead, it constantly reminds viewers who pays the highest price: the innocent, the powerless, and the forgotten. As filming began, few expected Eastern Promises to become one of the most respected crime films of its generation. There were no flashy shootouts every few minutes, no glamorous criminal lifestyle, no romanticized mafia mythology. Instead, audiences were introduced to something colder, more disciplined, more mysterious. A criminal culture built on centuries of unwritten rules. A code older than the Soviet Union itself. A code that determined who could rise, who would fall, and who would die. The origins of the Vory V Zakone can be traced back to the Soviet prison system during the 1930s. Thousands of hardened criminals were imprisoned in labor camps scattered across the Soviet Union. Inside these camps, survival depended on more than strength. It required organization. Over time, elite criminals developed a strict code of conduct that separated them from everyone else. To become a Vor was not something a man declared himself to be. He had to be accepted by other respected criminals in a formal process often referred to as being crowned. Without that recognition, the title meant nothing. Among real members of the underworld, falsely claiming to be a Vor could have deadly consequences. Hollywood has often portrayed gangsters as loud, emotional, and impulsive. The real Russian criminal elite cultivated a different image: calm, patient, calculating. They believed that losing control was a weakness. That philosophy is reflected perfectly in Semyon. Throughout Eastern Promises, he rarely raises his voice. He smiles, he jokes, he speaks softly. Yet everyone around him fears him. If you want to understand how closely Eastern Promises draws from reality, one of the clearest comparisons is between Semyon and Sergey Mikhailov. Mikhailov, often described in press reports as one of the most powerful Russian crime figures of the 1990s, became associated with the rise of the Solzhenitsyn group and the broader expansion of Russian organized crime beyond the borders of the former Soviet Union. Like Semyon, he was widely portrayed not as a reckless street thug, but as a polished, strategic operator who understood the value of appearances. Semyon does not look like a man who needs to shout to be obeyed. He looks like someone who has already built a system around himself. That is exactly the kind of image many real-world Russian bosses cultivated. They wanted to appear legitimate. They wanted power that looked respectable from the outside. Mikhailov's public image, at least in the way he was discussed by journalists and investigators, fit that pattern. He was often framed as a businessman first and a gangster second, which made him especially dangerous. Men like that could operate in plain sight. They did not need to advertise their violence because their reputation did the work for them. That is why Semyon feels so believable. He is not written like a cartoon villain. He is written like a man who understands that fear is most effective when it is quiet. But if the hierarchy fascinated investigators, nothing captured their attention more than the tattoos. In Eastern Promises, nearly every important criminal wears elaborate tattoos. Those designs were never random. Within traditional Russian prison culture, tattoos functioned almost like an identification card. Each symbol revealed part of a prisoner's history. A church with multiple domes often represented prison sentences. The number of domes could symbolize the number of convictions or periods of imprisonment. Stars placed on the shoulders traditionally signified authority and status. Stars on the knees carried another message: I kneel before no one. It was a declaration that the wearer refused to submit to authority. Cats frequently represented thieves. A tiger could symbolize aggression toward authority. Barbed wire sometimes indicated a sentence served from beginning to end. Religious imagery often had symbolic rather than spiritual meaning. To experienced investigators, prison tattoos could provide valuable intelligence before a suspect even spoke. But there was another side to this culture. Not every tattoo was earned honestly. Some prisoners decorated themselves with symbols they had no right to wear. If discovered, the punishment could be brutal. Older inmates might force the offender to remove the tattoo themselves. Others suffered severe beatings. In extreme cases, false status claims could become a death sentence. Respect wasn't simply expected, it was enforced. When Viggo Mortensen prepared for the role of Nikolai, he refused to treat the tattoos as costume pieces. He spent months studying prison symbolism. Experts advised the production team on placement and meaning. Each tattoo was chosen carefully so that someone familiar with Russian criminal traditions could read Nikolai's body like a biography. That dedication earned enormous praise after the film's release. Many former investigators described the tattoo work as among the most authentic ever shown in cinema. But tattoos alone never made someone powerful. Power came from reputation, stories, fear. In the criminal underworld, a man's name often reached a room before he did. Violence certainly existed, but among experienced bosses, reputation frequently prevented violence from becoming necessary. Yet every conversation carried an unspoken understanding. Cross the wrong person, and consequences could arrive days, weeks, or months later. Patience was a weapon. Unlike street gangs driven by impulse, sophisticated criminal organizations often preferred planning. This made investigations incredibly difficult. Witnesses disappeared, evidence vanished, victims refused to cooperate, fear spread faster than rumors, and then there was another obstacle: family. In Eastern Promises, loyalty to family is central to almost every decision. That too reflected reality. While criminal groups often argued internally, family ties created powerful bonds that outsiders struggled to penetrate. Blood relationships strengthened trust. Marriages created alliances. Godfathers became mentors. Children inherited influence long before they inherited businesses. However, unlike many Hollywood gangster films, the Russian underworld wasn't always organized into clearly defined families like the Italian Mafia. Instead, relationships were often built through prison connections, regional backgrounds, business partnerships, and long-standing personal loyalty. One of the most heartbreaking parts of Eastern Promises begins with the death of a teenage girl. She dies while giving birth, leaving behind only a diary that slowly uncovers the horrifying truth about what happened to her. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, thousands of women from Eastern Europe were recruited with promises of legitimate work abroad. Some answered newspaper advertisements, and others trusted employment agencies. Many believed they had found jobs as waitresses, dancers, cleaners, babysitters, or hotel staff. Instead, some were met at airports by criminals. Their passports were taken, their phones confiscated, their freedom disappeared within hours. Many victims spoke little or no English. Without identification, without money, without family nearby, escape became almost impossible. Criminals often relied on psychological control just as much as physical violence. Victims were told that if they contacted police, their families back home would be harmed. Others were told they owed enormous travel debts that had to be repaid through forced prostitution. Some were moved constantly between cities so they never became familiar with their surroundings. This method of control became one of organized crime's most profitable businesses. Investigators often describe trafficking cases as puzzles assembled from dozens of unrelated pieces. A passport found during one raid, a phone number discovered months later, a witness statement from another country. None reveal the entire picture on their own, but together they expose networks stretching across multiple countries. This complexity explains why trafficking investigations often take years. Throughout history, undercover officers have infiltrated organized crime groups around the world. American law enforcement infiltrated the Italian Mafia. Federal agents infiltrated motorcycle gangs. European police have infiltrated drug cartels, human trafficking rings, and financial crime networks. But infiltrating the Bratva presented a unique challenge. Unlike many criminal organizations, Russian-speaking syndicates often relied on personal history. Many members had known each other for years, sometimes decades. An outsider was immediately viewed with suspicion. That meant an undercover officer needed more than a fake identity. He needed a believable past, a convincing accent, knowledge of Russian customs, understanding of criminal slang, and, perhaps most importantly, patience. Some real undercover operations lasted years before investigators reached senior figures. Others failed because a single inconsistency exposed the officer's true identity. One wrong answer, one unfamiliar tradition, one person recognizing an old photograph. That was all it could take. This is where Eastern Promises begins blending reality with dramatic fiction. Could an undercover officer become trusted by organized crime? Absolutely. Could he rise quickly into the inner circle of one of London's most secretive Russian crime families? That is far less likely. The deeper an undercover officer moves into an organization, the greater the risk of exposure. In the movie, Nikolai's rise is compressed to serve the story. Still, Viggo Mortensen's performance captures something investigators often describe about successful undercover work, the ability to disappear. Nikolai doesn't try to dominate conversations. He observes, he listens, he speaks only when necessary. He never appears eager. That restraint feels authentic. Because experienced investigators know, the best undercover officers rarely attract attention. Then there is Kirill. At first, he appears unstable, impulsive, emotionally dependent on his father's approval. He lashes out without thinking. Compared to Semyon's calm confidence, Kirill seems completely unsuited to leadership. Although Kirill himself is fictional, his character reflects a real problem faced by many criminal organizations: succession. But perhaps no scene defines Eastern Promises more than the bathhouse fight. Nikolai, completely naked, is attacked inside a traditional Russian bathhouse by two assassins armed with knives. There are no dramatic speeches, no heroic soundtrack, no impossible martial arts, just desperate survival. The fight feels messy, chaotic, painful. Every movement carries consequences. Every mistake could be fatal. That realism shocked audiences. Director David Cronenberg intentionally rejected the polished action choreography, common in Hollywood. Viggo Mortensen performed much of the sequence himself, making every injury and every struggle feel painfully real. As the film reaches its conclusion, Nikolai appears to achieve the impossible. He gains Semyon's trust. He protects the child. He assumes control from within. It's a satisfying ending. But it also raises one final question: how much of Eastern Promises is actually true? The specific murders, betrayals, and family drama were all created for the screenplay. But nearly everything surrounding those characters came from reality. The criminal traditions, the tattoos, the concept of the Vory V Zakone, the use of restaurants and legitimate businesses as fronts, the trafficking of vulnerable women, and the international expansion of Russian organized crime after the fall of the Soviet Union. Unlike many gangster films, it doesn't ask us to admire criminals. It asks us to understand how they hide. And that may be the film's greatest achievement. It reminds us that the most dangerous people rarely look dangerous at all. And that brings us to the end of the real story from Eastern Promises. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another real story behind your favorite movies. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Eastern Promises is the most realistic mafia movie ever made? Or is there another film that portrays organized crime even better? Leave your answer in the comments below. Thank you for watching.
Hey, you want to watch a movie? Shh.